This week, as I'm sure you noticed, Liberal MP Craig Kelly has been roundly criticised for his public claims about COVID-19. They've been widely described as misinformation. He said he would continue pushing for Australia's medical authorities to change their position and endorse the use of drugs like hydroxychloroquine to treat coronavirus. But amid the heat, one name keeps coming up as the immunologist cited by Craig Kelly.
You've got to listen to our most senior immunologist, Tanya. It's Professor RobertClancy. Listen to him. Go and get his stuff, read what he's saying, and you'll find out, and then you can come and apologise to us.
That was Craig Kelly going head-to-head in the corridors of Parliament with Tanya Plibersek this week. RobertClancy is actually an Emeritus Professor in the School of Biomedical Sciences and Pharmacy at the University of Newcastle, and I'm pleased that he joins me on the phone this afternoon. Mr. Clancy, g'day, how are you?
I'm very well, and thanks very much for having me. I have a long and very positive association with ABC Newcastle.
Well, first of all, do you know Craig Kelly?
Look, I've never met him. I don't know him. I've spoken to him. He's rung me twice on the phone, but no, I don't know Craig Kelly. Look, I didn't ask for all of this.
That was my next question.
This has been the worst day and a half of my life, I think.
Now, Mr. Kelly has supported the use of drugs like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, as we know. Now, where do you stand on them?
Well, on that issue, and you know, there are many issues that Mr. Kelly has that I don't understand. But on that issue, my view is he's absolutely right. That there's overwhelming evidence that hydroxychloroquine works. The studies now are just under 20,000 patients, and these are not counting the country studies, because many countries are using these across the board. But the important thing is that it's used in very early disease. It's like treating any viral illness. Many of your listeners will know about things like herpes simplex and shingles. You have to treat them within 48 hours. And so a lot of the early studies, and I think this is where things became unstuck, a lot of the early studies were on people in hospital who were very sick. And as we now understand the disease, it has a phase where the virus is, dividing madly in the airways, and then it stimulates this massive inflammation, which causes the severe illness and kills people. And that inflammation is the characteristic of those who are in hospital. And so if you give an antiviral drug to somebody who's in hospital with the inflammatory component, of course it's not going to work very well at all or very well. And that's where things really became unstuck. So I think, as I understand it, Mr. Kelly has actually followed a lot of the literature, and I think he understands that, because when he says that hydroxychloroquine has a place in early treatment, I would think there are many people around the world, very, very senior people across the world, that would totally agree with that. And then I think his other drug is ivermectin, and that's a drug that came in a little later. The problem with hydroxychloroquine is that, which I may add, while I was in Newcastle for 25 years, I would have prescribed written prescriptions of somewhere under 10,000 scripts of hydroxychloroquine without any serious side effects. So it's a very safe drug. And then ivermectin came in, and it missed the political turmoil that hydroxychloroquine got tied up with when Trump used it. And that's been gaining ground, and the recent data that's coming out for that it's really very persuasive, and many countries now are picking this up.
Robert Clancy,
including Slovenia.
Robert Clancy, could I just throw something at you then? Professor Julian Elliott, Executive Director of the National COVID-19 Clinical Evidence Task Force, spoke to us. Here's what he said about hydroxychloroquine.
There's very, very clear evidence that it does not aid in the treatment of COVID-19. So at the Clinical Evidence Task Force, we look for new research every day. And we update our national guidelines every week. So I can tell you, as of today, we've identified 11 randomised trials. So they're the highest quality studies that you can conduct. And when you put all the data from those trials together, it's very clear that hydroxychloroquine does not provide any benefit for the treatment of people with COVID-19. So we have a very clear, strong recommendation to not use hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of COVID-19.
Isn't that an emphatic contradiction of what you just told us?
Well, he is being emphatic with his views. Look, I don't know the guy. I don't know how much he understands about the disease itself. I have absolutely no idea. I wouldn't even know where he works. But making statements like that is, in my view, unfortunate, because it's not correct. What has happened is that these guys who, for reasons I don't understand, don't want to see hydroxychloroquine used. And I honestly don't understand why. I do it's a political, social thing. But the data, if you look at the studies done when you need to use it there are something like 9 or 10 randomised controlled trials. And when you do a meta-analysis, which I'm sure he'd agree with is the way to go, you get p-values, which are the way you measure significance, which are extremely low, highly significant, and with protection of around 50-60%. Now, I'd be very happy to talk with him and find out why he has the views he has, because they're very different to the views that many people, for example, the head of biostatistics and epidemiology at Yale, who's been a leading figure in this. There are many very senior people around the world.
But why wouldn't they want every tool in their toolbox if they thought...
I think you've got to ask them. As I said, I think that's a political question, and I only answer the science. I base my comments on the science, and I can't just roll over and say I agree with a guy simply because he runs a task force.
RobertClancy, are you worried that the university has distanced themselves from you? There's a statement here that I've got from Alex Zelinsky, who says, while the university always respects freedom of speech, RobertClancy is not speaking on behalf of the University of Newcastle when offering his opinion on the issue. The university does not consider RobertClancy a subject matter expert on COVID-19. Are you concerned that your past employer distanced themselves?
I'm still a member of the university. I'm an Emeritus Professor there. Look, Alex and I are talking about this. I totally respect the university's view. I totally respect the fact that I do not speak on behalf of anyone but myself and my interpretation. I take umbrage at the fact that I'm not an expert, because I am. I actually was awarded the university's first Doctor of Science last year for 20, 30 years of work in just that sort of area. So I am an expert in it. I've run many, many clinical trials. But I don't know where they got that from. But what I would say is that, and I think where the university's coming from, and I understand where they're coming from, no one wants to see a disturbance of the rollout of the vaccine. And I think this underpins a whole lot of the thinking about this. No one should think, oh, look, this is an alternate to a vaccine. Vaccination is going to be the answer for this disease. Whether this first round of vaccines are the best of the vaccines, we have to wait and see. I think there's a lot of work to be done to really understand all aspects of these vaccines, and anyone who reads the paper will see that I think today certain countries in Europe decided to restrict one of the vaccine or other of the vaccine to certain age groups, things like that. And we're going to there'll be a bit of jostling here and there. So please don't confuse my thoughts and views with anything against vaccination. I believe both are needed, vaccination and early treatment, because not everyone is going to be protected by a vaccine. Not everyone is going to have a vaccine for different reasons, and you're going to need early treatment. At the moment, the attitude is, look, you're sick at home. When you're really sick, come to hospital and we'll give you some treatment. And the treatment I'm talking about is treatment that can be given to people in aged care homes, safe treatment, and even if it's only 10 or 20% effective. I'm looking at my screen at the moment, and there are 9 randomised controlled trials for early treatment showing a 66% overall in a properly done meta-analysis by a world-ranking epidemiologist. Now, that's crystal clear. That's data. That's fact. So I don't know where these other guys are coming from. I really don't.
Do you agree with Craig Kelly's claim that you're Australia's most senior immunologist?
I'm the oldest.
You did start
I
this.
started clinical immunology with two other guys because it didn't exist around the time I came to Newcastle. I did run probably the major mucosal immunology research group for 25 years. But if you define, I think probably the best way to, when I heard him say that, I said, geez, he's never seen me. He must think I'm the oldest guy around, which is probably true.
Robert Clancy, you started this interview by saying you were thrown into it unwillingly, and I appreciate you making yourself available to talk to us.
Well, I'm really, really pleased that I could talk to people in Newcastle because it's my great home, and I'm very fond of both the university and you guys, so that's great.
Good on you, Rob. Robert Clancy there, Emeritus Professor at the School of Biomedical Sciences and Pharmacy at the University of Newcastle.